Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing Speech Team by Tim Murphy. I'll talk very briefly about the author, go into a spoiler-free overview of the plot, talk about what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next time. Tim Murphy is a journalist, has been working mostly in New York City for a while, has written a book, I think came out in 2016, called Christdora, I believe is what it's called. That did get some buzz, and I think was nominated for one of the best debut novels of the year it came out. I think they've optioned it for a television show, and I don't think it's been started filming yet. But this is his follow-up to that, and is about a character. It's about a series of characters set in roughly the year 2013, who are former speech team. I'm going to try not to use debate team, but it's speech team. They were members of speech team in high school in Massachusetts in the late 80s, and the book picks up, roughly 30 years later, and the main character is a character named Tip Murray, who at the time was a closeted gay teenager who's now out, and he is a writer and has had struggles with addiction, drug and alcohol issues, and he's currently working, I believe, in Providence. He's kind of not really happy with his life, kind of upset with where his career is. He has a relationship with a man and that relationship is kind of rocky due to Tip kind of having his issues with drugs and alcohol. And he learns one day that one of his former speech team members has killed himself, and he has, in his kind of suicide note, pointed to the coach of the speech team as having said some things that were mean to him back then. And Tip remembers his own relationship with the speech coach as well, and that was rocky, as well as some similar incidents happened to him. And he slowly meets up with other speech team members that he was close to, one of whom he's still friends with, whose name is Natalie, and then Jennifer, who was one of the few black students at the high school, and then Anthony, who was a Lebanese, half Lebanese man. And so they all have had issues with this teacher, and they form this plot to go back and confront their old teacher about what their former classmates said, and to basically hold him to account or to rectify that situation. And so the book, I thought, had a very interesting moral question to it. I really did like the main character, who is our narrator, and I liked that the book is pretty well paced. I think it moves at a pretty good clip. I think the question of, if you have someone who wronged you, what is appropriate in terms of bringing this to their attention? Do you confront them with it? Do you not confront them with it? Do you have an obligation to move on from things if someone has harmed you? Or do you have an obligation to confront them with it, and at least to say, hey, what you have done has harmed me. I just wanted to let you know. And so I thought that was an interesting thing. The book is set in 2013, which I also thought was interesting. So there's a lot of like Obama nostalgia vibes in the book, which I thought was kind of funny. I think Tim Murphy is a pretty good writer. I can kind of there's enough of extra references to the book. As someone who's a little bit younger, I did enjoy that. But I thought that was fun, and I think that the relationship between Tip and his best friend Natalie, I thought that was fun as well. Overall, I thought it was fun. If there are issues with it, the main issue I kind of had with it, there's a couple of them. I think that the main impetus that kind of kicked things off with the character who kills himself, it's implied pretty heavily that he is autistic. And that character, once that kind of incident, the inciting incident happens, his spirit, other than maybe one other point in the book, is kind of lost from the book. I wish the author had found more way to kind of permanently give that character a voice as the book moves along, as events happen. I think that may have messed up a little bit of what he saw as kind of the esprit de corps of the four main characters, but I also thought that was important. I think the author tries to inject that at certain points, sometimes more successfully than others, but I wish that he had there's something of a little bit more of that character, because it does feel like he's used in the beginning as a jumping off point, but then that's about it. And there is kind of an implication that out of all the outcasts, and these speech team kids are all were the outcasts of their high school, and he is kind of the most outcast of the outcasts for reasons that are kind of become obvious as the book goes along. But I wish he had maybe more of a say in the book as it went along. I don't know what that would have looked like, if that had maybe been a relative, or what would have happened. But in essence, these characters are more or less strangers to each other as it is, and so I don't know how difficult that would have been. But definitely felt like I wish that character had more of a voice moving on. Not to belabor the point, but there's also, I think, some fairly predictable plot points. There's something that's kind of, you're like, okay, well, I think I see where this is going, and it goes where you think it's going to go. I think there's another point in the book where I think that there are some unpredictability to it as well. But there's one point in predictable, and I'm being vague because I don't want to avoid spoilers. It was pretty like, okay, well, I see where this is going. I think he's also kind of, and in answering that question of whether or not it's ethical or not ethical to confront people about past issues, there's another character who confronts another character about ways that they were bad to them in the past, and that's kind of elided over very, very quickly, and the book doesn't really take a strong moral stance there. I think to the ultimately bigger question as it pertains to their speech team teacher, I think that kind of lands on mushy ground as well. And I don't know ultimately what I'm supposed to think of as the speech teacher who is kind of, on one hand, is implicated in doing some really terrible things. In one instance, I would say, I'll just leave it at some very terrible things. He ultimately, it's hard to say like how to feel about him. Again, I'll leave it there. Leave it there for lack of spoilers. And so I thought the book was kind of mushy in its moral message. And then at the end, the book drags a little bit in the ending. It doesn't drag like the Goldfinch, like goes on for 20 pages, but it does drag a little bit, and I wish it like kind of gotten a little bit to the point a little bit faster. But overall, I had a fun time while I was reading it. I think that it reminded me very much of, if you've ever seen the movie The Big Chill, it's hard not to think about that movie. This is kind of like The Breakfast Club meets The Big Chill a little bit, where someone's death kind of instigates or is the inciting incident for a reunion, and these characters whose lives have changed kind of talk a little bit about why their lives have changed and who is to blame or not to blame for their lives changing, and how much this person meant to them, in what way he meant to them. And I thought that was interesting, and I think that overall I enjoyed it. But I do wish that there was some parts of it that I think could have been cleaned up, and I think could have been made stronger. The book isn't too terribly long. I think it's only about a little bit fewer than 300 pages. So I don't know if the book could have been lengthened a little bit in certain places, just to kind of give more of a voice to some of the characters and let some of the conflict breathe a little bit. The one thing with the conflict, the bigger issue I had with that is that one of the characters involved with one of the conflicts otherwise comes off as a relatively perfect character, and I wish that there had been more struggle with that character to understand where that person was coming from, especially in a book that's supposed to be built on empathy and trying to build empathy, and what is empathy, and is it earned or is it not earned, and at what point do you just have to accept if people are cruel to you. I wish there had been maybe more there, and I think that actual conflict doesn't really get time to breathe as much as I would have liked it to. But otherwise, I thought it was a fun read. Speech Team by Tim Murphy. Next time I'm going to be reading Medusa's Sisters by Lauren J. Hebert. Until next time, please, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't got a chance to do that. And until next time, bye.